1969, Doctor Who was dying. Script problems on stories like The Dominators were threatening to tear the series apart. Patrick Troughton, exhausted by the heavy film schedule, made the 6th season of Doctor Who his final one. The viewing figures had begun to slide as well. The War Games had reached new lows of 3.5 million viewers. Now, hoping to survive into the 1970s, the following year would have resulted in the biggest changeover the series had ever faced. Though things were far from clear, the BBC were even looking for a replacement show for the Saturday night slot, but they were unable to find one and decided to give Doctor Who one more season. Can you imagine if they did? I probably wouldn't be here right now. Under the watch of producer Peter Bryant and Derek Sherwin, they took influence from earlier Patrick Troughton stories, The Web of Fear and The Invasion. Script editor/producer Derek Sherwin created UNIT, United Nations Intelligence Task Force, in order to expand the supporting cast in the hope that this would take away the strain from the lead actor from having to learn all those lines. However, this series would be the shortest that Doctor Who had ever had at this point, reducing the episode count from 45 a year to 25 episodes a year. With the new format in place, scriptwriter Robert Holmes was asked to pitch an idea of meteorites falling to Earth that contained intelligence that would need a humanoid form to take over the Earth. This idea was based on a pitch that Robert Holmes submitted for the 1965 film Invasion, which coincidentally also featured an alien crashing into the woods near a rural hospital, where a medical examination reveals his alien nature, and the hospital is visited by other aliens seeking a fugitive criminal. For the new Doctor, Ron Moody was Peter Bryant's first choice. Yes, this Ron Moody.
The situation.
Can you imagine that? Fagin playing the Doctor? That would have been pretty awesome. However, Ron Moody wasn't interested in the role, but later says that he deeply regrets turning down the role. Their second choice was Jon Pertwee, but they were a bit concerned due to his background in radio comedy, particularly on the programme The Navy Lark. However, one of his co-stars, Tenniel Evans, suggested that he put himself up for the role, but Pertwee himself wasn't so sure. Head of drama Sean Sutton took Pertwee out to lunch twice, hoping to convince him of playing the Doctor, but then they settled on dinner, where Sutton revealed that he wanted Jon Pertwee for the role. John's response was allegedly, "Who the hell is Jon Pertwee? I've never played him before." Eventually, Pertwee accepted and hoped to play the role that the children would believe in, but be straight enough so that the adults would be invested as well. Filming commenced in a local plastics factory, and outside Unit HQ in episode 2, the guard you see was played by producer Derek Sherwin. Sherwin had to replace the young actor who was unable to, act. Tip if you're going into this industry, even if your role is very small, know what you're doing. Derek Sherwin then played the part of the guard completely unpaid. The scenes where the Autons attacked the public were filmed in Ealing, but they couldn't afford for the Autons to break the shop window itself. Luckily they fixed this for the new series. Industrial action by the BBC meant that this serial had to be filmed entirely on location, as studio space was unavailable at the time, and this became the only Doctor Who story of the classic series to be shot entirely on film, and for the first time in colour. When filming concluded, producer Peter Bryant was called in to produce Paul Temple, and due to the scripting issues, he had to take Derek Sherwin with him. Former actor and director Barry Letts was hurriedly called in as producer and would remain in this position for the remainder of the Jon Pertwee era. You know, with all these massive changes in front of and behind the cameras, I'm so relieved that the internet didn't exist in 1970. So, let me get this right. Doctor Who is now going to be set entirely on Earth and in colour. I mean, this completely, and I mean completely, goes against everything Doctor Who stood for. What happened to travelling in time for escapism? Everything's set on Earth now. I don't want to be reminded of the real world. I watch Doctor Who for entertainment and escapism. And they're hiring comedy actor Jon Pertwee to play the Doctor. He's never done serious roles before. I mean, what next? Are they going to cast a well-known comedian to play the companion next? Ugh, that'd be so bad. Maybe he has done straight acting before, but I won't bother to look it up because I know I'm right. And they've got hack writer Robert Holmes for the opening story. He's yet to write anything good for the series, evident from last year. I mean, maybe he could improve for the next series, but I'm judging him before he writes anything for the new series because I have a huge persecution complex. and with the episode count now being cut down and Derek Sherwin now leaving the series, mark my words folks, Doctor Who is going to be cancelled any day now. In the year of our Lord 1970, Doctor Who is nothing more than an agenda pushing against time travel. I mean, there is just so much here for me to pretend to be angry about. Now with all the what-ifs and the production history out of the way, let's look at the story. Exiled to Earth in the 20th century, the newly regenerated Doctor arrives in Oakley Woods accompanied by a meteorite shower. UNIT is soon put into action when people and meteorites begin going missing, with the new Doctor joining forces with Dr. Liz Shaw and Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. Remnants of a living plastic creature known as the Nestene Consciousness plans to conquer the Earth by substituting Auton replicas for men and women in key government and military posts. Only the Doctor, Liz Shaw and UNIT can stop it. Spearhead from Space is one of the most important stories in Doctor Who's long history and was the biggest changeover the series had ever gone through until it came back in 2005. This is the only time in the classic series that they begin a new era with more or less a clean slate. No characters from past adventures appear here, I mean aside from the Brigadier, but everything just feels new, and in my opinion Spearhead from Space brings Doctor Who back with a bang, and this new era is off to a flying colour start. See what I did there? A lot of this I do think is down to Jon Pertwee's performance, and I'll admit, in episode 1, it was quite gutsy of them to not show the Doctor right away. We don't see his face until nearly the end of episode 1. We see him fall out of the TARDIS and then we hear him groan in the hospital bed, before finally showing his face to the Brigadier when he goes to visit. Think of it this way, at the end of the War Games we're more or less following the Doctor in his exile, but now with a new Doctor he spends most of the first episode in bed. Plus the first cliffhanger is him being shot by one of the guards. Can you imagine if he actually regenerated there and then? Luckily, Pertwee more than proves himself in his debut and gives us a dashing, confident, gadget-mad protagonist who you definitely want to follow. His costume is also great. He dresses like an upper-class gentleman and like a member of the establishment, but in subsequent stories he would prove to be a completely anti-establishment figure. I personally feel that the costume shows that this Doctor wants to look good, but he doesn't care about what time zone he's in, so he will wear whatever looks cool to him. After escaping the hospital, he takes more of a commanding presence in the story, and I'd say that my Jon Pertwee moment of the week was his scene between him and the guard outside Unit HQ. He pretty much tells the guard, who doesn't even get to say a word, that he's in charge and wants to see Lethbridge Stewart. He doesn't have a pass, but he's getting into that building anyway. I buy this right away. It shows that this Doctor isn't messing around, and you don't deny for a second that he's in charge, and the most knowledgeable person in the room whenever he enters. Other great moments include him trying to convince Hibbert that Channing is his enemy and he also must resist him. Also, the scene of him escaping the hospital is pretty great. I love the shower scene. Plus, on a side note, is this the first time we see the Doctor's nipples on screen? Even the moment when he looks at the sign on the door and sees it's for Doctors Only and enters is just perfect. Something tells me that this scene was written to show off Pertwee's comedic range, but I don't mind that at all. Another fun fact for you about the Doctor in this story is that this was the first ever serial to reveal that the Doctor has two hearts. Shaw, played by Caroline John, also makes her debut here, and she definitely proves herself worthy to be a companion. Liz Shaw is a stark contrast to companions we got in the 60s, as she doesn't really scream for help or ask a lot of questions. She's a real scientist whose wits and cleverness can rival even that of the Doctor's. And what I like about the Doctor and Liz's relationship is that they feel like equals. They both have a love and knowledge and understanding for science. She even helps the Doctor defeat the Nestene in the climax of the episode, rather than scream for help or twist her ankle. There is initial conflict between her and the Brigadier, as she is brought down from Cambridge against her will, and they need her assistance. She's reluctant at first, but after seeing the Autons and the Nestene, she realises that this is serious and the Earth is very vulnerable to attack, so agrees to help. The Brigadier is also a welcome return, played excellently by the irreplaceable Nicholas Courtney. Of all the characters they brought back for the new series, I am glad it was this one. I do like how initially he thinks he knows everything when he hears reports on an alien and a police box, but the realisation that the Doctor can change his appearance opens his eyes a lot more. Not everything is now as simple as it seems. He's now working with a man who can change his appearance, and that the enemy itself is very close to home. Everything is now not as black and white as it all seems. See what I did there? But he also gets to be a great man of action when he fights the Autons at the factory towards the end. Courtney is such a great action star, and I'm almost sad that the Brigadier and unit didn't get their own spin-off with him as the lead. The Autons and the Nestines are a great new monster for this new era of Doctor Who. With the new leads, the audience initially doesn't have someone relatable to latch onto because they're all new, except maybe the Brigadier. But I think that they could latch onto the concept of shop window dummies coming to life because it's something so relatable that people see every day and would hopefully encourage any new audiences to watch. It may sound like I'm repeating myself a bit here from Rose, but it's not my fault. Both stories are similar, so kind of work with me here. The look of the Autons is also brilliant. They have no expression yet look so smooth and shiny. The artificialness of the plastic texture really adds to their creepiness. Similar to the Cybermen, their eyes and faces are blank, but it adds so much to the creepiness. They initially look harmless enough, but the reveal that they have a gun hidden inside their hands is a chilling reveal. I also have to mention the most iconic scene of the serial when they come to life in shop window dummies and begin killing civilians. Just amazing. Not only is the scene shot beautifully, but it just shows how unstoppable these creatures are. Nothing can stop them. They move more smoothly than their 2005 successors and counterparts, but they're still very effective. Plus, episode 3 of this story marks the first time that a monster in Doctor Who is seen inside somebody's home, when it's looking for the Nestine energy unit. The more you know. Where I think they fall short is the realisation of the Nestine itself. The tentacles aren't entirely convincing, and Pertwee's gurning in the scene certainly doesn't help. Which is a shame, as it's meant to be the climax of the episode, but that's where it falls flat for me. The supporting cast are also pretty good, and for me the best two characters in this are probably Sam Seeley and his wife Meg. They're both examples of Holmes' characterisation, who I think in later years would become almost flawless at it, giving us some great memorable characters. You get the sense that the years of living together, they get on each other's nerves, particularly with Meg, who's sick of Sam bringing home crap from the woods. Though when you think about it, Sam bringing back the meteorite results in his house being ransacked and his wife attacked by an Auton. Is that a dig at poachers that hunt and scavenge? Hugh Burden as Channing is pretty chilling and creepy. Like the Autons, his expression never changes, but it's still a very creepy performance, as when he orders Ransom's death, not only does he order the Auton to kill him, but have his body completely vanish. It shows how ruthless the Nestines are and how far they'll go in their objectives. Hibbert, played by John Woodnutt, is an example of fighting against a big corporation. The Doctor tries to convince him that he must resist Channing and break away from this huge company. First story in colour, and there's already digs at big businesses. And like big businesses, they'll remove anyone from existence who disagrees with them. Ransom's fear at the Autons is very well played as well. It keeps the stakes and fear of the Nestines high, and his death proves that they must be stopped no matter what. Production-wise, this episode gets off to a great start due to the industrial action. Everything was shot on film and on location, and Doctor Who has never looked better. The fact that they used real locations just makes everything seem enormous, and the way the streets and forest scenes are shot just make it all seem so much closer to home for the viewers. The industrial look of the factory is great as well, dirty and rustic. Obviously a lair for an evil villain, but a great looking one nonetheless. I particularly love the way the Autons are filmed, definitely at the end of episode 2 when Ransom doesn't notice one move behind him, but we the audience do, and it's so chilling, shot at a wide angle lens and coming slowly towards him. The POV shot used for the Jeep crash is also pretty effective, and a cheap way to not actually get a Jeep crashing, but it really adds to the disorientation that the soldiers feel when inside the Jeep. The way the aftermath is shot is also pretty horrific as well. We see the driver's head crashed through the windscreen and blood down his face, but it works in the story's favour, as it's not just there to show, lol, look how dark we are, but to show how real this threat is to the Earth. Just great stuff, I think. The music by Dudley Simpson is also very effective. While it can be pretty repetitive in areas, it still hits the right notes, and I love the Auton theme when they appear. Plus the music disappears when one of them is deactivated near the end. That's a nice touch. What I like about this music is that you can never really tell if it's sound effects or music, and while I can understand if it's too disorientating for some audiences, me personally, I'm all for that type of music. So, in conclusion, Spearhead from Space is an excellently paced, wonderfully shot, confidently performed serial that still holds up today, nearly 50 years later. Yes, nearly 50 years. We're getting old, guys. Jon Pertwee is a great new Doctor, Liz Shaw is an equally competent companion, the Brigadier and unit are great new additions, and the villains are simple but very effective. With all these elements performed with such excellence, Doctor Who's new era in colour and the 1970s was now well and truly secured. Well everyone, that's all from me. Be sure to like, share and subscribe. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of Spearhead from Space. And what is your favourite Auton story? Is it still Spearhead from Space, or do you prefer Terror of the Autons or Rose? Let me know and I'll have a look. And I shall see you all next time. Goodbye.